Hello, friends. Welcome to Book Fuels. Today we're going to talk about Read People Like a Book by Patrick King. Every person has a certain pattern in the way they think, understand, and behave. If we learn to recognize this pattern, it becomes easier to understand anyone's intentions, emotions, and decisions, and even predict them in advance. This pattern is influenced by their past experiences, emotional needs, and psychological conditions. In other words, the person someone is today is the result of the experiences they have had in their past. If we carefully observe someone's behavior and understand why they are acting a certain way, we can also anticipate their future actions. For example, suppose you have a friend who always gets angry over small things. You notice that whenever someone points out his mistake, he immediately gets defensive and starts arguing. If you try to understand his personality, it's possible that this behavior is connected to his past life. Maybe in childhood he was scolded a lot or made to feel that he was never right. So now, whenever anyone points out his fault, his brain reacts instantly with anger to protect him. If you understand this pattern, you can predict that next time someone tells him he's wrong, his reaction will likely be the same. Similarly, if you know someone who is always ready to help others, even if it causes trouble for themselves, it may mean they find their sense of worth in making others happy. Maybe they've had experiences where they only received love and acceptance when they prioritized other people's needs over their own. That's why it's now become a habit for them to help others, even at their own expense. If you recognize this pattern, you'll understand why they keep doing it and that they're likely to continue behaving that way in the future. Another way to understand people's behavior is to look for the gap between their words and actions. Many times people say one thing, but their true intentions are different. For example, suppose a colleague always says he doesn't care about others' opinions, but whenever someone criticizes him, he stays upset for weeks. This means his words and his true feelings don't match. What he means is that he wants to appear like someone who doesn't care, but in reality, other people's opinions affect him deeply. If you understand this pattern, you can predict that the next time he's criticized, he'll get upset again. When analyzing behavior, we also need to observe how people react in different situations. For example, someone might seem very playful and open with friends, but turn very quiet and serious at work. This may mean they're very good at adapting themselves to their environment. But if someone behaves exactly the same in all situations, for example, always being serious or always joking, it means their behavior comes from their core personality, not just the environment. Sometimes people adopt a fake personality to impress others. But if you observe them closely, you can spot their real personality. Suppose someone always tries to appear very confident, but when asked a difficult question, they get uncomfortable and try to change the subject. This means their confidence may be more of a display. If you learn to spot such patterns, you'll know who someone truly is and who is just pretending. Our behavioral patterns are also connected to our psychological needs. Some people have a strong need to always be right, so they never admit mistakes. Some constantly need attention, so they keep doing things to make people notice them. Some like to control others, so they try to command everything. If you understand which need is most important for a person, you can also guess how they will behave. For example, if someone always speaks first in group discussions, this shows they crave attention. If someone else starts talking more than them, they may feel uncomfortable and will try in some way to pull the attention back to themselves. Once you recognize this pattern, it's not hard to predict how they'll react in the future. Another way to understand behavioral patterns is to analyze people's decisions. Whenever someone makes a big decision, it's not only based on the current situation. Their past experiences, fears, and desires also play a big role. For example, suppose someone rejects every new opportunity because they fear failure. This fear might be linked to a time in their past when they took a big risk and failed. Now they want to avoid any risk. If you spot this pattern, you can predict that in the future they'll keep avoiding risk. Similarly, if someone always jumps at every new opportunity without thinking, that's also a pattern. Maybe they've learned that grabbing opportunities instantly is the key to success, so they're always ready to take new chances. Understanding people's behavior patterns not only helps us know them better, but also improves our relationships. If you understand the reasons behind your friend, partner, or colleagues' behavior, you can be more patient with them and build better harmony. Finally, it's important to remember that no person remains exactly the same forever. People change over time, but even change happens in patterns. If you recognize these change patterns, you can also understand in which direction someone's life is going and what their next step might be. So if you want to understand people better, don't just focus on their words. Observe their behavior carefully, understand their past experiences, desires, fears, and needs. Once you do that, you'll not only learn to read people, but also become skilled at predicting their future decisions. Most of us believe that to understand someone, we only need to pay attention to what they say. But the truth is that body language and facial expressions are more powerful than words. Many times, people say one thing, but their real meaning shows through their expressions. If we learn to read someone's body language and facial expressions accurately, we can understand their real emotions, even if they're saying something else. For example, you ask your friend if they're okay, and they reply, "Yes, I'm fine." But if their voice is low, their eyes are looking down, and their shoulders are slumped, does that really mean they're fine? Probably not. Their words are saying one thing, but their body is telling another story. That's why, instead of relying only on words, we should pay attention to gestures and body language too. Facial expressions are the most telling signals because a person's real emotions quickly appear on their face. When someone is happy, their eyes sparkle, there's a slight smile, and their face looks open. When sad, there's heaviness in the eyes, the eyebrows droop, and the lips tighten. Fear, anger, surprise, and worry. Each emotion has its own expression, and if we learn to recognize them, we can understand anyone's mental state. Suppose in your office a colleague says they have no problem with anyone, but whenever a certain person enters the room, their body language changes, their face stiffens, they avoid eye contact, and their hands unconsciously clench into fists. You can quickly guess they do have an issue with that person, even if they deny it verbally. Other body language signals include posture and gestures. For example, when someone is interested in something, their body leans forward, their eyes focus on the person or subject, and their eyebrows rise slightly. If someone is bored, they lean back, their eyes wander, and their hands may be idle, signaling they're just passing time. If you're talking to someone and they're constantly shaking their legs, checking their watch, or looking at their phone, it may mean they're restless or not very interested in the conversation. Small signals like these can tell us what the other person is actually feeling. People often try to hide emotions, but their bodies still leak signals. For example, when lying, people often avoid eye contact, touch their nose or face frequently, or their voice changes slightly. If you learn to pick up on these cues, you can tell when someone is being truthful and when not. However, it's important not to draw conclusions from a single signal. Drooping eyes don't always mean sadness. Maybe the person is just tired. Crossing arms doesn't always mean they're angry. Maybe they're cold. Context matters. When reading body language, we should look for clusters of signals. For example, if someone is standing with crossed arms, that alone doesn't prove they're upset. But if at the same time their eyebrows are furrowed, lips tight, and their body leans slightly back, these signals together can indicate they're angry or defensive. Another example. Someone might smile while talking to you, but their eyes show no happiness. The smile is only on the lips, their eyes look tired, and they keep touching their neck. This may mean they're smiling just for show, but feel uncomfortable inside. The art of reading people is useful not just in personal relationships, but also professionally. Suppose in a meeting your boss says they like your project report, but instead of a happy face, they show slight irritation and keep their hands still on the table. This could mean they're just being polite but are not truly satisfied. If you catch this signal, you can improve the report in time and leave a better impression. Reading body language and facial expressions also helps assess honesty. If someone says they didn't make a mistake but hesitates in their voice, avoids eye contact, and rubs their fingers together, these may be signs they're not fully truthful. Reading body language is a skill that comes with practice. If you start observing gestures and expressions in everyday life, you'll gradually learn what each signal means. But remember, every person is different. The best way to read someone's body language is to first notice their normal habits. If someone is usually very energetic, but one day sits quietly, it might mean something is wrong. Similarly, if a usually calm person suddenly starts using a lot of gestures, it could be unusual. Once you pay attention to these little changes, you'll be able to sense what people are actually feeling, even if they say otherwise. This will improve your ability to understand and communicate effectively. Everything a person does has a reason. Some work hard because they want success. Some save money because they worry about the future. Some help others because it brings them joy. Some lie to avoid trouble. If we understand what brings someone happiness and what they fear, we can predict how they will behave in the future. In reality, every person's two biggest motivation drivers are seeking pleasure and avoiding pain. People do what either makes them feel good or saves them from discomfort. If you observe someone closely, you'll notice what they move toward and what they avoid. This is important because once you understand a person's motivation, you can predict their future decisions. For example, in your office you have two colleagues. One works extra hard, takes on more tasks, and learns from every mistake. The other does the bare minimum, avoids risks, and stays away from new responsibilities. Why the difference? The first person is motivated by the happiness of success. Maybe they want a promotion or recognition. They believe working harder will bring the joy they seek. The second person is driven by the fear of failure. They don't want to make mistakes or face criticism, so they avoid taking steps that could lead to trouble. If you understand these motivations, you can predict that if both are given a new project, the first will take it enthusiastically, while the second will try to avoid responsibility. The same applies in other situations. Suppose you suggest to a friend that they start going to the gym. If they're motivated by pleasure, they'll think of how gym will improve their fitness, make them feel good, and enhance their personality. If they're motivated by avoiding pain, they'll think about preventing illnesses, avoiding obesity, and staying away from health problems in the future. Both may go to the gym, but for different reasons. Similarly, if someone often gets angry, it's worth understanding the motivation behind it. Maybe they had to constantly defend themselves in childhood, so now they always try to prove their right to avoid that struggle again. Or maybe they value their self-respect so much that any perceived insult makes them react angrily. Once you know the reason, you can predict when they'll get angry and how to calm them. Fears also influence behavior. Some people are overly careful about their social image because they fear rejection. They make sure to wear the right clothes, speak correctly, and avoid social mistakes. Others are very cautious about money because they fear poverty. They focus on savings, avoid spending, and never buy unnecessary things. If you know a person's fears, you can predict their decisions. Suppose you have a friend who is very cautious in relationships. They don't trust quickly, don't open up much, and think a lot before starting anything new. Maybe they were badly hurt in a past relationship and now want to avoid that pain again. So they weigh everything carefully before committing to avoid going through the same hurt. Similarly, some people care a lot about appearances. They always buy expensive things, post good pictures on social media, and exaggerate their success. Their motivation could be the happiness they get from praise and recognition, so they maintain a lifestyle that gets admiration. Or it could be fear. They think that if they appear ordinary, people will judge them, so they try to always show a higher status. If you're dealing with a customer, wouldn't it be useful to know what motivates them? If a customer buys something for pleasure, you need to show how your product will make their life better. If they buy to avoid loss, you need to show what harm they risk if they don't buy it. Even with children, when a child studies, it's either because they want good grades and praise, pleasure, or because they want to avoid failing and punishment, pain avoidance. If parents understand what motivates their child more, they can guide them to study effectively. Our decisions also work the same way. Someone might take a new job for higher pay, pleasure, or because they're tired of the old job, pain avoidance. Someone might marry because they want a partner, pleasure, or because they fear loneliness, pain avoidance. If you understand whether someone's life is driven more by the desire for pleasure or the need to avoid pain, you can predict their next steps, their behavior in different situations, and what will influence them most. When you understand people at this level, your ability to communicate and build relationships becomes much stronger. Every person's needs are different, But if you look closely, these needs follow a certain order. Some people focus first on earning money and fulfilling basic needs. Others care more about love and relationships. Others put career, recognition, and self-respect above all else. Understanding at which stage a person is can help you know what will influence them the most and how they will behave. Psychologist Abraham Maslow explained this with his hierarchy of needs, which divides human needs into 5 levels. The lowest level has the most basic needs, and as a person fulfills them, they move to the next level. If you identify where someone is on this ladder, you can also understand what will influence them most and how they'll decide in the future. The first level is physiological needs: food, water, sleep, and basic comfort. If these are not met, a person's full focus will be on them. For example, if someone is unemployed and has no money, their main worry will be meeting their daily needs. They won't care about relationships or self-esteem. Their brain will first ensure survival. Now, think, if someone is struggling for food and you tell them to focus on self-development, will they take it seriously? Probably not, because their priority is feeding themselves. That's why when we talk to people, we should first see which level their needs are at. If someone is focused on meeting basic needs, we should understand their current situation before talking about bigger motivations. The second level is safety needs. This includes job stability, a home, health, and security for the future. If someone's safety needs. The second level is safety needs. This includes job stability, having a home, good health, and future security. If a person is focused on safety needs, most of their decisions will revolve around making their life stable and predictable. For example, someone might choose a lower-paying job over a risky, high-paying opportunity simply because it feels more secure. The third level is social needs. These involve relationships, friendships, love, and a sense of belonging. If someone's basic and safety needs are met, they naturally start to focus on building and maintaining relationships. They seek companionship, group acceptance, and emotional connection. For such people, rejection or loneliness can be extremely painful, so they may go out of their way to maintain harmony in relationships. The fourth level is esteem needs. This includes respect, recognition, achievement, and self-confidence. At this stage, people want to be valued by others and themselves. They aim for accomplishments that earn them respect. Someone motivated at this level might work very hard, not just to survive, but to prove themselves and gain a reputation. The fifth and highest level is self-actualization. This is about realizing one's full potential, pursuing personal growth, creativity, and purpose in life. People at this stage are motivated less by material gain or social approval and more by a desire to fulfill their own unique capabilities. They might take on challenges, explore new ideas, and follow passions regardless of others' opinions. When you can identify which stage of needs a person is at, you can understand why they make certain decisions and predict their future behavior. For example, if someone is at the safety stage, they might avoid risky ventures even if they offer big rewards. If they are at the esteem stage, they might take on challenging projects to prove themselves. This framework reminds us that no two people are motivated by exactly the same things at the same time. The same action, such as changing jobs, can come from completely different motivations depending on which need is strongest for the individual. In conclusion, learning to read people means going beyond their words and observing their behavior, body language, facial expressions, past experiences, fears, desires, and needs. When you understand the deeper motivations driving someone, whether it's the pursuit of pleasure, the avoidance of pain, or a particular stage in Maslow's hierarchy, you gain the ability to anticipate their actions and respond in ways that build trust, understanding, and stronger relationships.